Hello, everybody. We're here with the CEOs of leading coding organizations focused on coding for kids, ready to share the reason behind the success of their organizations. Hint, hint, it's the curriculums. We'll talk about how you can create a coding curriculum that engages, interests, and challenges. We'll also discuss at length why a curriculum is the foundation of a successful and thriving coding company. And we'll talk best practices in staying relevant in today's rapidly changing industry when it comes to curriculum. So are you ready to take your coding curriculum to the next level? Please type yes in the chat on Facebook if you are. Before we do get going, let's welcome the founder, CEO of Bright, my friend Dimitri. It was his brilliant idea to start this webinar series to kick off a coding community and to talk about, frankly, the challenges of running a coding academy. Dimitri, welcome in.
Yes, thank you. Excited to be here and excited to talk about actual curriculum because I think that is the most important part of the whole activity of the whole business, the whole educational process.
I was thinking, and I'm not a home builder, but I do know that probably the foundation of a home is really important. Is the curriculum the foundation of
yes.
the business?
Yes, curriculum is the foundation of any program, right? If you don't have a curriculum, it's all going to be babysitting.
And is it overlooked quite often?
I'd say yes. I'd say a lot of the times curricula does not get enough attention that it deserves, that it should be getting, and sometimes it can be compensated with good kind of entertainment or good way of a good level of improvising by teacher, but still having that foundation is important.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we're not here to entertain. We're here to really engage and chat. We've got a serious group of people in the audience today as well. People are chiming in already on Facebook. Founders, CEOs, operations managers, key executives at some of the nation's top coding course providers. Let us know who you are, where you're from. The Facebook chat for Bright is the perfect place to network with others, maybe even make some friends. Anna from Cascade Communications, our team, will be leading the chat on Facebook. And she will be sending questions our way. There's Anna. And you can hear me. And now Anna's gone. That's live TV, guys. It happens. But let's bring up our panelists. We've got Brian Moran and Ken Adelglass. So let's bring Ken in because they are our expert panelists for today. There's Ken. There's Brian.
Hello.
Working.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining us. You guys have found great success in building your own organizations, and you're ready to share these experiences. Our format today for the discussion, we'll have a question for each Ken and Brian. They'll have 2 to 3 minutes to respond. Dimitri will then follow up. We are going to start with Brian, who is my neighbor in Washington, D.C. Before 2017, Brian worked as a VP of Director of Product Management of different SaaS companies. He works at the intersection of cross-functional teams of customer sales, engineering, and marketing personnel launching products that solve important problems. Now, he works on Boolean Girl full-time since 2017. So, Brian, you'll tell us about that. But first, let's get to your question, okay? What is the most important aspect of the curriculum that any entrepreneur or owner has to focus on from day one?
Well, so we didn't figure this out on day one. It took us a little while to get here, but really for us, the most important part of the curriculum is making it personal and relatable, right? So that the kids come in and they're not just working on the same project. They're working on something that is important to them or relatable to them. And that it's differentiated, right? One of the challenges in teaching classes is that you get kids kind of at all different levels in a class. Mm-hmm. And so the curricula needs to be able to be differentiated. So those kids that are going faster can be challenged, and the kids that are going slower, that might be younger or less experienced, that end up in the same class for some reason, are challenged but not overwhelmed. And we do this by basing our courses around a driving question, right? So we'll start with a driving question that's, for instance, how can you use coding and creativity to create a story about you, or a story about being brave, or a story about a challenge that you faced? So, the course itself is kind of flexible, but it gets personal and relatable to the kids.
Interesting. Dimitri, how about, you see coding companies all the time. Can you comment on that approach and why it has been effective?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with Brian. There needs to be kind of a general direction, right? Where are we going, right? And, I think the kind of old school approach of teaching, lecturing at students and saying, I'm this teacher, I'm the authority, it's gone, right? It's not effective anymore. You need to be able to be flexible. You need to be able to actually accommodate different speeds. So I think, lately we've been seeing more and more educators taking an approach of, hey, I'm going to be more of a facilitator. I'm going to be helping you, guiding you, but you need to learn at your own pace. And the best part about it, which excites me the most, is actually I start seeing more teachers who actually not afraid to learn along with the students, right? Because that's the fundamentals of science, right? You iterate, you experiment, you try, you learn as you go, and then you test your hypothesis, and you keep going, right? There's always, fail forward, right? Always fail, learn, continue. And I think this plays really, really well when you have that kind of general direction. Which direction are we going to? Because that opens up a lot of opportunities for those iterations, experiments, failures, and learning from the failures. So, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I especially agree with the point around the teachers being willing to kind of experiment. That's been one of the things that we've worked really hard on for the last year or so. Is we're starting to work with more and more, actual teachers at schools who are adopting our curricula. And one of the hardest parts is getting them over that hump of, I don't have to be the expert in the room, right?
Yep.
And now we're hearing these great stories of teachers that are like, wow, it's so cool. The kids figured this out before I did and showed me,
Yeah.
Who's really learning there? Everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is, I think it'll probably take another, maybe 4 or 5 years and maybe another pandemic until we actually get to the point where teachers like, all right, I'm not gonna be afraid to experiment.
That's interesting. I mean, I was going to ask.
Let's hope no.
We don't need another pandemic. But I was going to ask, what role has the pandemic played in this? And when I ran my tutoring company, I also spoke to tutors and said, you don't have to know everything. It's okay. You can look in a textbook. You can Google something. You got to be able to learn it pretty quickly. But you don't have to expect to learn everything. So I'm wondering, if the pandemic has caused, because we have these live interactions like this, there's a lot of live learning that's going on. And so I think that's pretty cool. Let's bring Ken in. Ken has been working in the corporate world as a computer programmer for over 20 years. Now he's the CEO of Carolina Kid Coders. They provide kids ages 7 and up with fun and engaging summer camps and workshops in coding and robotics. Here's your question, Ken, a little bit different. What part of the traditional coding curriculum should we change? Where do you see an opportunity for innovation today?
From my perspective, so I've been at this since 2014, and when I began, there really was not a whole lot of information out there for us to work with. So I grabbed what I could and wrote my own from the very beginning. And what I find, what engages kids a lot, the more of their, you got 5 senses, the more of those senses you can use to engage, to use in the curriculum will get to keep the kids more engaged. And that's what I found. I like to combine different things. And I try to encourage this too when I go to schools and talk to other teachers too. So I like to combine, for example, if they're making a video game, I like to add external things to it. For example, we have little microbits. Let's make a game controller with the microbit after we make the game. And the kids love that. And also when we're doing camps and other things, we also use another little robot called Cody Rocky. And when we're doing camps with this robot, it has all kinds of sensors and different things. And one of the projects we do with it is it responds. It has an accelerometer in there, so you could shake it, and you can make like a Magic 8-Ball type of game. And we sort of just get the kids started with it, and on that concept of making it their own. So I give them the fundamentals of making, and we usually do this in our camps and in our classes. So I'll get them started. I go, this is what happens if you you shake it. How many choices do you want? And so then they have to add all the choices they want. And then we start talking about adding sound to it. So now they're touching, feeling, shaking, typing in the code. They're collaborating. A lot of times we'll team the kids up in two, and they'll say, you'll see them bouncing the ideas off each other. Oh, put that in, use that sound, use this, that. And that really gets them truly engaged in the process. So I think the next step for curriculum, in my opinion, is really combining a few different things into one. Not just making a game, but making a game where you can use an external game controller that they make, and that sort of thing too. And I was looking at Brian's product that he has, which is terrific, and I think that hits it right on the head too, with all that type of engagement with it. So that's what I like seeing as well in curriculum. And and if it's not there, I have a programming background. I'll usually end up taking something and just growing it out and seeing how the kids respond. Once it responds, it becomes like an evergreen type of thing that I'm going to use at camp after camp after camp after class.
Right. Hey, Dimitri, I wanted to ask, as we're sitting here discussing, I kind of back to my tutoring experience back in the day. I never thought there was competition. I never really competed with other tutoring companies because there's so many kids and there's so many opportunities. And, just what Ken said, something very nice about Brian, and these guys are separated by 500, 600 miles, whatever it is, from DC to North Carolina. What's the secret sauce, and where does the curriculum play into that, in terms of running your own academy and being able to support each other anyway?
I think it all comes down to, you're not going to differentiate yourself by having, a unique curriculum, right? It's important to have it. It's the foundation, right? You're not going to differentiate your house by having a green foundation, right? Right. But what goes on top of that? That's how you're gonna differentiate. And so I've had we've been working with Ken for the longest time. He's been probably our very first customer, and since then I had some customers asking us like, well, what if my neighbor goes and gets the curriculum that you offer? I'm like, that's okay. There's enough of kids for everyone. But the differentiator is actually the customer experience, right? What is the experience that you provide on top of that foundation, on top of that curriculum, right? If your teachers are just sitting there picking their noses and not paying attention to kids, no curriculum in the world will help you, right? But if you get that curriculum and you get the teacher, you involve all 5 senses to deliver that curriculum, and then you have some engagement, some sort of like engagement features, gamification, then your kids are going to be jumping out of the car before it's even parked to run into your center, to run into your classroom, or they're going to be logging in 20 minutes before the online class starts, and they're going to be talking to other students, and they're going to be sharing. So it is what do you put on top of that curriculum? What is that customer experience that you provide?
Question, again, and Ken and Brian probably saw this, I'm not necessarily the world's greatest coder. In fact, I've never coded anything. So here's a question for somebody who, if I was starting a coding academy, does it matter when you're selecting a curriculum if you are focusing on in-person or online?
Go ahead.
You want to go, Brian? It's
No, go ahead.
Yeah, we've tried both, and actually during COVID, one of the things we did was the old pivot, because I like the idea of kids coming into our studio, and plus I have rent to pay, so I want to use the space for something. But for a while when we were locked down and everything, we decided to, and I actually there is a different. It's actually more, in my opinion, I think it's more difficult doing online. There's just so much more that can go wrong just from doing these webinars. There's little things that can go wrong. So you can imagine when you try to get a 7-year-old on a computer, and their mom or dad's in a meeting in the next room,
right,
and you're trying to teach, and I find there's a lot more wasted time. I personally don't enjoy it. I've done it. But we have had successful. We've run live camps where the kids would come on in Zoom, and we would do dual, and that was probably one of the biggest challenges we had. And it actually worked fairly well. We got good at troubleshooting as long as we were able to somehow access what they were doing and walking them through. We got through it pretty well, and it ended up being pretty fun when we give the kids, like in camp, when we gave them playtime. They love it because there'd be kids up on the screen playing, and they'd be yelling at the kids in the studio. So we had a lot of fun in that aspect. But I do find it much more challenging doing online learning. My school isn't really geared towards that. It's geared more towards summer camps, and we also have a drop-in academy as well. And just to keep things simple, which is what I like doing, I'm focused now on the drop-in academy and unless we have another
don't say it.
Pandemic.
Don't jinx it.
So
that's how
there's the mute button. We need to drop them off.
Yeah. And the other thing is we have other things in our studio. Like I said, I like kids to see, feel, touch, and hear. And so we have like a building area for robotics and electronics and that sort of thing. And that kind of thing is I think very difficult to deliver live.
Okay. So your view is one curriculum and hopefully one way of delivery, which is in person. Brian, what about you?
So we do a little bit of both, and you definitely do have to differentiate your curriculum for online versus in person.
Yeah.
But I 100% agree with Ken. The in-person experience is so much better, and beyond just the technical issues, it allows for more projects where you can do things where you're touching stuff, engaging the five senses to steal from Ken. And also it allows kids to collaborate. I'm sure we've all seen it, right? The one kid that's sitting there coding something, figures something out and yells out, "Wow!" And the other kids just get up out of their seat and come over and see. When that happens in class, I'm like, home run. This is what I want. And then the question is, how did you do that? And all of a sudden, the kid is teaching the other kids, right?
Yeah.
And then like you're really getting someplace. So the in-person is just, now the nice thing about the online, you can reach kids that can't get to the in-person, right? When during the pandemic, we had kids from all over the United States and even, Canada, Mexico, Australia, kids that we wouldn't have reached otherwise, and were frequently in rural communities where they might not have access to a face-to-face camp. So, you got to balance and we're probably 80-20, 80% in person and 20% online.
Okay. Dimitri, because you see a lot of companies, I'm going to ask you a question here, and we're going to, get even more granular. We've got Brian and Ken, who are running essentially kind of two different businesses. Brian's focused on young women, and Ken is running a not-for-profit. Do people need to think about that when they're choosing a curriculum? Do they need to get that granular? And we talked about this, you and I, which I thought was really nice. You and the folks at Bright help people select the right curriculum. Is that correct?
Yeah. So there are three things. There are three parts that we do, right? First, we aggregate. We basically take curriculum from the best content creators. We aggregate it. Then we curate it. Basically, we take out things that we don't think it's gonna work well. Only leave the best of the best, and then we recommend. So let's say if Ken comes to me and says, Dimitri, here are the age of kids that we have. These are my objectives. This is what we want to do. And I tell, okay, Ken, so here's what we think would work well, and then they can also, and Ken can take this as a kind of template and then customize it to make it even more personal to him. So yeah, when it comes to different types of organizations, yes, they have different, again, different objectives, different methodologies, and you have to consider that you can't really use that cookie cutter approach, right? Because the cookie cutter approach will lead to poor customer experience, right? And it will lead to, and even worse, it will lead to low quality education, right? So you got to consider a lot of different things, right? Again, what is the age of the kids, right? Even what is the kind of demographics of your kids, right? For kids in, for example, somewhere in Kentucky, are going to be different than kids in California, right? The way they learn, the way they do things, and you got to consider also, what is your goal, what is your objective, right? So there's no kind of like a single like a answer. So it has to be, you have to take a lot of different variables into consideration.
Great. Remember, everybody on Facebook Live, you're more than welcome to pass us questions. We will ask them. Dimitri, when I heard you describe the curriculum process, you said aggregate, curate. It almost makes you sound like a farmer, like a curriculum farmer, and you do like this farm to table for people, which is really fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you can say farm to table. Yeah.
That's you. You're a farmer. But I read this. I found this article, and I wanted to ask you about it. First of all, guys, I didn't write this lead of this article, but I thought it was an interesting lead. The article is called "Coding in Education: Why It's Important and How It's Being Implemented." And the first line is, although computer programming was once seen as a skill reserved for geeks and computer nerds, it's now regarded as an essential ability for 21st century learners. And the article goes on to say, another important goal for a boot camp is to help students to secure entry-level roles in the tech industry. To achieve this, boot camps aim to teach current and in-demand curriculum. So back to you, Dimitri. How do you continue to farm for your people the best curriculums that are actually in demand?
Well, this is kind of what we live and breathe, right? This is what I'm weekly. This is what I have dedicated time on my schedule where I go, I look for new, what are the new trends? What are the technology trends? What's next, right? For example, a few years ago, you could say like, let's say 2013, 2014, oh, Java is the number one language. Well, now we're going into era of JavaScript and the JavaScript frameworks taken over, where that's kind of what for the next few years. And with the cloud technology, JavaScript is even more popular, right? For example, with AWS, you will be using the JavaScript technology, JavaScript frameworks. So this is something that we constantly do, but then we have to do another layer of work. Actually, break it down from hey, take a child 10 years from now. What do they need to know, and how do they get there starting today, right? So if JavaScript is going to continue being the number one kind of number one stack, where do we need to get kids started today? Okay, well, Scratch is a great start. What's then? Then we can do simple, JavaScript with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Then okay, get further. Then we can get into all those frameworks, which are a little bit more complex. You probably gonna need to go into deeper topics like data structures, algorithms, right? But there is a path, right? So that's kind of the work that we do, and I think that's what educators need to do. Coming back to, what's your objective? Do you want them to be game developers, web developers? Do you want them to just have fun?
Right.
What is your organization is about? Is
Right.
it about, if it's you want them to be like deep tech and AI and machine learning, then you gotta start think about the languages like R, right? Or some other, and then break it down, whatever go. But in general, kind of start with absolute basics, right? Scratch is a great start.
And you don't, I know obviously, Dimitri, this is your business and you guys do this like farm to table, but you also told me that, as the owner of Bright, as the CEO of Bright, you get to network and work with people like Ken and Brian, and Ken is, he was your first, so to speak, right? So you listen to him and he's always on the cutting edge of, let's try this or let's try that. So Ken, can you talk about, the collaborative effort that is happening in this whole community to say, hey, Dimitri, it's your company, but let's try this. Looks like Dimitri wants to talk.
Can I add something before Ken starts?
Of course, your show.
What I want to say is like Ken is actually, besides being the first customer, he's the only person that I know who genuinely gets excited about new things, new technologies, and he even get more excited when he gets to share it with us or anybody else, and he gets like, there's something like, let me look into that. He connected me with so many different people who work on different things in terms of kind of curriculum technology. So I think what Ken is about to say right now, take a note, because he is the expert in that.
Ken, go for it.
So actually, it's funny. A lot of times our research kind of crosses. So like, for example, with Code Kingdoms, I've been using Code Kingdoms now for Minecraft and Roblox game development for kids, and it's great for kids like 8, 9, and up. And when Dimitri was developing Bright, I said, well, I use Code King. He goes, yeah, we're going to have Code Kingdoms. And oh, okay. Yeah. Goodbye. Thank you. And next thing we know, we have that on there. And that's always a big part, because kids like on that topic of, making kids be, so many kids are into Roblox and Minecraft now. I think they kind of ebb and flow with each other. These days, I think Minecraft is back to being fairly more popular, and the kids want to learn how to make Minecraft mods and that sort of thing. And that was one of the key things in the Bright curriculum. That was great. But going back to when I started, so there wasn't a lot of curriculum for summer camps or anything. So I had to just create my own and just pray that the kids liked it and see how that went. So, which in turn made me really good at researching and finding things. Mm-hmm. And I'm always searching robots. I'm watching YouTube videos, seeing if I missed something out there. I'm on a zillion different mailing lists for new products. My email is always flooded with stuff, and a lot of it I weed out. But what I really look for in curriculum and products is some like robots. For example, like certain robots are more like toys than they are educational tools. This is why I like Lego robotics, because I don't like a robot out of the box that could talk and sing and play. I want the kids to be able to make it do that instead of just opening out of the box, because then it just becomes a play toy. They play for a little while and then that's it. So what I look for is something that can engage a child for at least, and I look at it in terms of camps. My camps are half days, so they're 15 hours. Can this engage kids at least for half my camp, which would be like 7 to 8 hours? And if the answer is yes, perfect. Same thing with like anything on Bright. Can this engage my child, the children coming in on a week-to-week basis? If the answer is yes, and I can actually have a path for them to grow. Like, for example, can they learn Scratch and then slowly segue into learning Python and making games in Python? So I like to see, you know, a path, and that's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
And that's what, and I'm always like saying, hey, Dimitri, have you seen this? Have you seen have you seen that? And like I said, usually our paths cross a lot. Like I said.
A lot.
And Brian, you know, obviously there's a lot of collaboration that goes on, and that's great. That's what community is about. I would also point out, and maybe you can talk a little more, is you also, you know, talk about the name that you have, talk about the boxes, talk about your original approach to focusing just on young women and girls, and that, you know, you can have a curriculum, and it's really smart to have one because it's the foundation, but you also still need to be yourself.
Right. So, yeah. So, you know, my story is maybe a little similar to Ken's, right? I worked in tech for 20 some years, and I was looking for something to do to give back, right? And I started talking to folks about, you know, things I could do that could have an impact. And, you know, this was about 2013, 2014, right before kind of all the tech companies had kind of been outed about their diversity issues. But I worked with some women who started saying to me, you should teach girls how to code. And I'm like, well, why just girls, you know? And so they started flooding me with articles about the diversity issues in tech. And one day at lunch, one of them asked me, Brian, you've managed all these big teams, lots of technical folks. How many of them were women? And they said, not documentation, not product management, not doing this, but hands-on keyboard coding or running systems. And I could only think of one. And I said, I get it. You know, I said, this is something that we can do that's impactful. So that's where we started the nonprofit Boolean Girl. The name really just comes out of Boolean, which is kind of, you know, Boolean logic, core to coding and all, and girl's pretty obvious, you know, and so that was kind of our mission. And, you know, a little bit like Ken, probably when we started, there was no curriculum. We were making it up. The other thing I heard, I think Dimitri say a little differently than this, which is you kind of got to follow the kids, right? So when we started, we were doing what I would do if I were taking a class. Let's go build a game, right? And so we'd start by building games. And I found the girls were constantly taking these games and turning them into stories, right? It was no longer about like the ghost catching the guy or whatever. It was, well, this is my friend, the ghost. And I was like, why don't they build the game I want them to build? You know?
Yeah.
And I was like, ding, you know, and I started talking to some educators and stuff, and they were like, you got to open this up a little bit. You've got to let them do what they want to do and put the curriculum as a foundation kind of underneath. Like, here's the things I want them to learn, variables and things like that. But the way that they approach it and what they build needs to be their choice. And that was eye-opening for me. And it's been a real evolution. So you know, we did not like day one get it right. It took us a while. But it's had a great impact since then.
That's amazing.
Follow the kids. They'll tell you what works and what doesn't. You can see it in their engagement and excitement.
Yeah, you just gotta listen. You just need to listen. You just need to make notes and kind of do what Brian did, right? It's like, hey, there's something about it, right? Don't try to push an agenda,
right.
But actually sit down, learn, and listen.
Yep.
Right. Well, Diana agrees with you. Totally agree with encouraging more girls in tech. So Brian, keep it up. We are not here to push an agenda whatsoever. We do have, though, a passion, you know, about what's happening, and Bright is really kind of leading that passion. Bright is what brought us here. So Dimitri, I'm going to give you the honors here. Talk a little bit about Bright, and then once you give us the elevator pitch, you're going to tell Mark, who's behind the scenes, who's our producer, to roll the tape on your awesome commercial.
I think I already talked about me. Already talked about what we do, and I don't think I can add anything else. Like I said, we help educators. We aggregate, curate, recommend. If you want to teach kids to code, we're here to support you. We're here to support your mission. Initially we started as a educational nonprofit. We were running an academy, but now we switched to being a software company. You can't really be a nonprofit and run a software company because you need to raise capital and build fast, and you can't do that. But our nonprofit, our for-profit side of the house, still supporting our nonprofit side of the house. So I like to think of ourselves not as a company with a mission, but rather mission with a company behind it. So, and we just that's what we're here for, to support educators like Ken, Brian, to whether it's help them with the curriculum or just share the knowledge, just network. That's what we're for. That's what we're here for.
And put smiles on people's faces. So I'll do the honors. Let's see this awesome commercial. Please, Mark, play it.
If I learn to code, if I learn to code, I will be more creative. I will be a better problem solver.
And I will have more self-confidence.
If I learn to code,
I'll be 40%
more likely to become an inventor.
If I learn to code, I will have better focus.
And a higher chance of having a job I will enjoy.
I will learn how to think outside the box.
Be not afraid to fail.
Will you let me learn to code?
Will you let me learn to code?
That's great.
Thank you.
I love that.
Everybody knows who's attended webinars 1 and 2. My favorite is the girl who looks down at what she just did, and she's like,
"Oh well, whatever." Be
All
not
good.
afraid to fail. Yeah.
On to the next opportunity to try something new. So we're going to close this out. We're going to land this plane. I think that the takeaway here absolutely, is that curriculum is the foundation of any coding company, but then you have to begin to differentiate yourself, as Brian and Ken did, as Dimitri has seen other companies do. This is a community that has been created, that is literally live right now on Facebook, probably chatting it up in the background, which is awesome. So Dimitri, can you just talk to people about how they can reach you and be more successful in their coding academies?
Sure. You can always submit a contact form on our website, gobright.io, or contact me through LinkedIn, through email. My email is Dimitri, kind of like spelled exactly how my name is spelled right now on the screen, at gobright.io. And I usually pretty quick to respond via email, unless I'm on my kind of detox time. I usually take some time when I just don't look at emails at all. So that's but other than that, email is a good way, and LinkedIn, of course. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn. That's one of the best ways to stay in touch with me.
Good. There's nothing wrong with detoxing, chilling out. We've got a month until our next webinar, and the next one is going to be Extend Your Reach, hiring coding instructors that teach as well as you do. So heads up, for Coding Academy owners, you got to find people who can teach as well as you do. And we'll have another roundtable discussion. Dimitri, thanks for bringing us here. Ken, Brian, thanks for really telling your stories. They're super interesting. Those kids are lucky to have you. And everybody, let's keep the conversation going, and we'll see you next month. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.
Great day.